Comments putting this moment in a historical framework, but some undeniable rebukes for the Republican Party. He said this, where Republicans once believed that limited government meant lower taxes and more autonomy, today, limited government means inciting violence against government officials. It's striking, Garrett, coming out of our opening conversation with Congressman Biggs, someone whose support Kevin McCarthy is trying to curry, spreading lies about the murderer in Buffalo, who was publicly stated his views as being those of white supremacy, saying that that was a left-wing conspiracy theorist that committed that horrid massacre. Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney may have lost their jobs, but they certainly aren't out there trying to win anybody's support from the insane caucus like Kevin McCarthy is.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kinzinger is somebody who, interestingly enough, came into Congress and was fairly close with Kevin McCarthy and has become one of his sharpest critics as he watched the rest of the Republican Party pivot from what they were when he was coming out as a military veteran and a veteran of the Iraq War, coming into this Congress and watching the Republican Party turn into something else entirely. He has been, I think those comments will sound very familiar to our viewers, to folks who've become familiar with Adam Kinzinger's work, not just critical of Donald Trump, but especially critical of those who have enabled him within the Republican Party. And by the way, I thought his warning to Democrats is something that we should make note of, too, that Democrats who have supported, election-denying candidates because they would be easier opponents for Democratic candidates if they get through Republican primaries. He warns that they're playing with fire and that Democrats can't say, where have all the good Republicans gone when they support, far-right primary opponents to make it easier for Democrats to hold on to seats. So you see the kind of honesty you often get in these farewell speeches for members. But again, here from Adam Kinzinger, very consistent with the criticisms he's labeled on both parties for the last year and a half at least.
Let me read that part of the speech, Garrett, that you wisely point out. To my Democratic colleagues, you too must bear the burden of our failures. Many of you have asked me, quote, where are all the good Republicans? Over the past 2 years, Democratic leadership had the opportunity to stand above the fray. Instead, they poured millions of dollars into the campaigns of MAGA Republicans, the same candidates President Biden called a national security threat, to ensure these good Republicans do not make it out of their respective primaries. This is no longer politics as usual. This is not a game. If you keep stoking the fire, you can't point fingers when our great experiment goes up in flames. This was a point of contention. The January 6th committee did come out against this practice when it was happening. I know some Democratic consultants would point to the results of the midterms as proof that they're playing with fire panned out in some instances. But it is another example of where the members of the committee, Democrats and Republicans, have always had a single stakeholder in their view, and that was defending democracy. It's just another piece of what makes this committee's body of work and their public statements, to your point, Garrett, so consistent.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. They've really, to a degree that's incredibly rare, even in a committee like this one that is essentially handpicked, been singing from the same hymnal from day one. And I think our reporting has indicated that's part of the confusion, frankly, about what's exactly going to happen next week and when, is that the committee has recognized that their unanimity in how they've approached things like, simple things like referrals for contempt charges to big things like the incredible focus of their hearings has been part of what has made them effective. And they don't want to stumble here in the final week with disagreements over kind of smaller things that might distract from what has been an incredibly consistent message from day one about the threat to democracy that started well before the 6th and proceeds to this day, in their view.
David Jolly, this was the last line that we listened to together. Quote, had I known that standing up for the truth would cost me my job, my friendships, and even my personal security, I would, without hesitation, do it all over again. I can rest easy at night, knowing I've fulfilled my oath to office. I know many in this institution cannot do the same. It's a sort of an echo to something he said about Liz Cheney and himself. He said, we're not heroes, we're not brave. It just points to the fact that every Republican around us is a coward.
Yeah, that line resonated, Nicole. My wife and I on election night, our last election night, where we lost in a newly drawn district, I referred to the sleep well at night test. Having spent a year denouncing Donald Trump and taking on the party, what I did know in that moment, there was clarity. And I see that clarity in Adam's face today, there was clarity that for my wife and I, we could sleep well at night knowing we had made the decisions that we believed were right for the country. Clearly, Adam Kinzinger has done that. Liz Cheney has done that, a handful of others, and the nation owes him a debt of gratitude today. He did so at great cost, as he mentioned, to his personal security, to his friendships, which you lose along the way, and he has left a mark in history. And we will see some of that in the January 6th report that comes out. I do think politically, both Adam and Liz Cheney are going to have to find their way a little bit. There is not a natural home for them. And I would say it is natural for him to offer his criticisms of fellow Democrats for investing in MAGA candidates. That's a fair criticism, but it's not an equal criticism. And I think that's really important, because what the Republicans have done for the past 6 years has damaged the republic in historic ways. And they have changed the meaning, or how we interpret the Constitution and what we allow the executive branch to get away with. And as Adam said, they have harbored ignorance and racists. That is not true of today's Democratic Party. They made a tactical decision in an election that is fairly criticized, but there is no equity with the behavior of Republicans these last 6 years.
I don't want to zoom off this point, because I think you're talking about things that people will learn when they're coming out of their official roles in the GOP. And the first thing I think that hits you like a wake-up call, and I think it dawns on some people more quickly than others, is the death of both siderism. Now, it is Garrett's job to go suss out the truth about everyone he covers, but that is different from someone like Adam Kinzinger using his mantle to say, here's what this side did wrong and here's what the other did wrong. What Democratic campaign operatives did is, you know, maybe like a, I don't know, speeding ticket. What Republicans did is treason. It's an insurrection. What the reason the text messages from 34 Republicans with little nibbles and tidbits, like they're swapping Christmas cookie recipes about how to overturn the government, is still news today, is because they're still in the body that they threatened. The reason Sergeant Ganal retired this week is because his body is so damaged from doing hand-to-hand combat with Donald Trump supporters who were invited by a lot of those members. And they're not at the same level. And they may have ended up in the same speech, but they're not part of the same sort of post-political conversation that Adam Kinzinger seems interested in having, David.
Yeah, that's right, Nicole. Look, every member who leaves office under normal circumstances, Steve Israel and I have had conversations like this, the former campaign chief of the Democratic campaign arm in the House. You really are overwhelmed with a lot of lessons learned. And some of those, many of those, are just in the breakdown of today's two-party system, right? 70% of the country agrees, according to Gallup, that things just aren't working right. And so that's in the reform space. And you come out of Congress saying maybe we need gerrymandering reform or open primaries or campaign finance. We have to reform the two-party system as it sits today. Those are almost academic, but you often then conflate those with kind of moral judgments of the actors within the body, and that's where there is no equity. I mean, if Republicans had had their way over the last 6 years, we may not have a republic today, right? If January 6th had been successful, who knows where we would be today? Democrats were trying to save the republic in that moment. It was Republican supporters that were trying to destroy the republic in that moment. This is a consequence of historic proportion. There's an inequity of the criticisms. But honestly, truly, Adam, Liz, and others need a wide berth right now.